Did the Reserve Bank cover up a corruption scandal? That was the question before a federal parliamentary committee today. The RBA is accused of hiding corruption within its subsidiary companies over bribes allegedly paid to foreign officials. And today, Governor Glenn Stevens faced a grilling from MPs. The hearing was called after 7:30 revealed fresh evidence last month that the bank knew of the scandal but didn't call the police until after it was revealed in the media. Nick McKenzie has this report.
This morning, Australia's most powerful bankers arrived at a specially convened parliamentary committee hearing. It's a safe bet to say that Glenn Stevens or his recently retired deputy Rick Battolino never expected to be dealing with allegations of bribery and corruption when they became Reserve Bank chiefs. But that was the focus of their appearance before the House Economics Committee today.
At any stage through this process that you've been derelict in your duties?
Let's get right to it. No, I do not.
The central question is, what did the RBA know about the scandal involving its subsidiaries Note Printing Australia and Securency allegedly bribing foreign officials to win banknote contracts? And if it knew about corruption allegations, did it do enough to deal with them?
What regrets do you have, or lessons have been learned generally?
There should have been more scepticism and more questioning of the managements of both companies earlier.
The corruption scandal was exposed in 2009 by The Age newspaper and later by Four Corners.
It's part of a system, a corrupt system.
Markets will start saying Australian companies bribe, so don't touch them.
The media expose prompted the Reserve Bank to immediately call in the federal police. The scandal has also led Glenn Stevens to be repeatedly grilled about what the RBA knew about corruption prior to the 2009 media expose. Stevens has previously said the media allegations came as a shock, and the RBA knew nothing about Securency's alleged links to corrupt behaviour before they hit the press.
No one in the Reserve Bank or on our board had ever had put to us those allegations before that time.
But over the last few months, the RBA's handling of the affair has faced serious scrutiny, with revelations by a whistleblower, former banknote executive Brian Hood, who is now a star witness in the AFP's prosecution of former currency executives. In 2007, Hood uncovered alleged corruption in both NPA, where he worked, and also inside Securency. Hood's evidence has been explosive, especially revelations that he told the Deputy Governor of the RBA, Rick Battolino, in June 2007 about his corruption concerns, only to be later victimised and forced out of his job. Today, the RBA chiefs responded to Brian Hood's claims.
He was seen as a whistleblower, and he was offered every protection as a whistleblower.
Mr Battolino took credit for getting Mr Hood to put in writing his corruption concerns, and he denied Mr Hood's claim that after being made redundant, Mr Battolino had told Mr Hood to never raise them again.
It would have been an absolutely pointless thing to say, because it was Mr Hood that had insisted on the secrecy around this. And in fact, if I have one regret about all this, is the fact that the bank, or myself, put his interest ahead of our own.
The question pressed by several committee members was why the RBA did not call in the federal police immediately after Mr Hood had relayed to the bank his detailed corruption concerns, instead of waiting until similar allegations were aired in the media.
Wouldn't a lesson of the Australian Wet Board scandal have been to call in the Australian Federal Police at that time?
Well, I must say that that wasn't a lesson that I myself had drawn, and no one had drawn it for me.
Instead of going to the police, the RBA relied on the advice of a corporate law firm, Freehills, which found no direct evidence of bribery.
The law firm doesn't have investigative powers, whereas when the federal police or some similar body comes and asks you questions, a different set of arrangements kick in altogether.
I accept that the Australian Federal Police have more extensive powers than a legal firm.
Another question was why, when the RBA finally called police in 2009, they did not give them Hood's written corruption briefing.
You can't recall whether you
disclose the fact that you'd met with the manager from Note Printing Australia and asked for him to put his concerns in writing and conveyed those to Frederick?
I can't recall whether I said that. Because, again, keep in mind that from our perspective, that document came at the tail end. That was me following up.
You've said that.
That's the mentality we had at the bank. That was.
So the likelihood is you didn't mention it, I suppose.
I'm not sure. I can't recall what was in that conversation.
Mr Battolino also defended not telling the committee in earlier hearings about the extent of the corruption briefings he'd received from Mr Hood.
If you're asking me, do I recall, 6 years after the event or whenever, everything that was in that audit report, I had a very
Well, I've got to tell you, I think if you look back at the media coverage in the lead up that prompted the questions, I would have thought that if you hadn't recalled, you'd reminded yourself.
Look, my understanding was, the broad understanding I had at that point was that the audit report had made all these allegations about business practices and raised some suspicions.
Glenn Stevens revealed to the committee that in 2007, when Mr Hood dropped his corruption bombshell, the Governor did not think to advise the then Treasurer Peter Costello that an RBA subsidiary was facing serious allegations.
It didn't cross my mind to go to the Treasurer.
As for Prime Minister Julia Gillard, she apparently has never sought to ask Mr Stevens about Australia's worst corporate corruption scandal.
So you've never had a conversation with the current Prime Minister about this issue?
No.
The three bank chiefs grilled today all insisted they had acted with diligence and in good faith. But Mr Stevens also conceded that, with the benefit of hindsight, the police should have been called in far earlier.
Were we to see that set of circumstances again, older and more scarred and wiser now, I think it might be prudent to still do that whole process, but to, at the end, say to the police, we've done this, this is our conclusion, and we're not proposing further action, but we're advising you, just in case something comes up one day.
Nick McKenzie reporting.